no hide or hair of the hairy man. You can't even see my head. Well, no wonder why he's missing out all these helicopters searching for him too. Well, anyway, I'm here to talk to you guys about a movie that I actually really love. And well, let me get my trusty little paper book out, because even for my favorite movies, I can never remember what I'm about to talk about. This is a movie directed by Val Guest, starring Peter Cushing, Forrest Tucker, Maureen Connell, Arnold Marl, and Wolf Morris. One of the earliest, well, actually the earliest Hammer horror film, or Hammer creature flick, as you could say. This predates Frankenstein or Dracula, based on a show that also starred Peter Cushing at the very beginning of his career. Let me introduce you to the amazing film from 1957, The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas stars Forrest Tucker as Tom Friend of F Troop, Sands of Iwo Jima, The Crawling Eye, and Gunsmoke. Peter Cushing plays Dr. John Rollison, also of Star Wars: A New Hope, and many other Hammer films, including The Curse of Frankenstein. As well, he portrayed Sherlock Holmes in many films. Maureen Connell plays Helen Rollison of ITV Television Playhouse and Kill Her Gently. Richard Wattis plays Peter Fox, also The Man Who Knew Too Much and Hobson's Choice. Robert Brown plays Ed Shelley, also of many of the 007 films, The Lion of the Desert, The Newcomers, and The Doctors. Michael Brill plays Andrew Jacques McNee, also of The Camp on Blood Island and The Adventures of Robin Hood. Wolf Morris plays Kusang, also of The Message, Return to the Lost Planet, Cuba, and Blood Island. Arnold Marl plays the Llama, also of The Snake Woman and The Man Who Could Cheat Death. Anthony Chin plays Major Domo, also Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Fifth Element, and A View to Kill. Jack Easton plays one of the Yetis, and Fred Johnson also plays a Yeti, also of A Christmas Carol, Curse of Frankenstein, and The Brides of Dracula. Joe Powell also plays a Yeti, mainly performing the stunts, also of Moby Dick, Tarzan the Lost Safari, Exodus, Cleopatra, and Lawrence of Arabia. In the scene where we see the Yeti's eyes, this scene is portrayed by John Ray, also of Kidnapped, 12th Night, and The Six Proud Walkers. The Abominable Snowman was directed and written by Val Guest, with producers including Michael Saris, Anthony Nelson Keys, and Aubrey Baring. Further writing was handled by Nigel Neal, with editing by Billy Lenny, and music by John Hollingsworth and Humphrey Cyril. Cinematography was handled by Arthur Grant, with sound design by Jock May. The assistant director was Robert Lynn and Hugh Harlow, with makeup by Harry Honsash and Phil Leakey. Costume design was handled by Molly Arbuthnot and Beatrice Dawson. Continuity was handled by Doreen Sohn, and production design by Bernard Robinson and Arthur Banks. Art director on the film was Ted Marshall, with the camera operator Len Harris and production manager Don Leaks. The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas released August 10th and 26th of 1957 in the United Kingdom and October 19th, 1957 in the US, with a runtime of 1 hour and 31 minutes on DVD, with the box office and budget unknown. Production and distribution for the film was handled by Clarion Films, Hammer Films, Exclusive Films, Warner Brothers Pictures, 20th Century Fox, Regal Films, Stars, Anchor Bay, and Screen Factory. The film is currently certified as A for adult from the British Board of Film Censors. The film is a cult classic with a mostly positive reception, with an IMDb of 6.4 out of 10 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 53%. Some taglines include "We dare you to see it alone" and "Demon prowler of the mountain shadows, dreaded man-beast of Tibet, the terror of all that is human." The film currently has 0 nominations or awards. Filming locations include the Pyrenees Mountains of France, as well as Bray Studios with Down Place in Oakley Green, Berkshire, England of the UK. As well, Pinewood Studios of Ivor Heath, Buckinghamshire, England in the United Kingdom. Filming took place from January 14th to March 5th of 1957, give or take. As well, some scenes were possibly filmed in Switzerland. The film opens to Dr. John Rollison, played by Peter Cushing, and a Dr. Peter Fox, played by Richard Wattis, also known as Foxy. While being guests in a Himalayan monastery, they discuss their gratitude of being gifted some new medicinal plants to the temple's Lama, played by Arnold Marl. After Foxy excused himself, the llama inquires about John's wife and colleague, as well as his climbing accident that left him needing a cane. This happening a few years prior. He then asks him why several men have been seen traveling to the monastery, one of which the llama has seen before, but John lies and pretends not to know. Moments later, they are joined by John's wife, Helen Rollison, played by Maureen Connell. After learning of the party, Helen becomes concerned with John possibly leading another expedition, not for botany, but for the fabled Abominable Snowman. Later, the group arrives, led by Tom Friend, played by Forrest Tucker, and followed by Ed Shelley, played by Robert Brown, Andrew Jacques McNee, played by Michael Brill, and their guide Kusang, played by Wolf Morris. As the ceremony gets underway, the group have dinner and discuss several sightings, including McNeil's. As well as evidence while trying to convince the skeptical Helen, Tom pulls out a small casket made of silver, inside containing a small canine tooth that was stolen from the monastery years prior. John inspects the tooth, deducing it must belong to some type of ape, and decides to take it to the llama. The llama tells him that the tooth is a fake carving and warns John to be cautious if he is to go searching for the Yeti. Much to Helen's dismay, John leaves with the men on their journey to the next day. After coming under fire by some bandits, the group takes shelter at a small camp. Over a meal, they discuss the possibilities of how the Yeti came to be. John takes to the notion that it could be an ancient offshoot of human-like ape that took to the high altitudes to survive in seclusion. Tom then decides to let John in on the truth, that their goal is to hunt and capture a beast as proof. An argument ensues, but McNee hears a noise that alerts them outside, but after finding nothing, they turn in for the night. The next day, Foxy tries to comfort Helen's worries about John and the other men, so he goes to talk with the llama, but finds him in a meditative trance. Back with the expedition, John finds some edible moss and believes it to be a viable food source for the creature. Alone together, McNee confesses to John that he actually has no experience for an expedition like this, but after finding footprints years ago, he grew an obsession with finding and trying to document the creature and paid Tom to join the expedition. After the two fall behind, McNee steps on a steel trap and has to be freed by Shelley. They then walk to the camp where they've revealed that they've caught a Himalayan monkey, which Tom plans to pawn off as a fake Yeti. After learning of an incoming storm less than 24 hours away, another argument erupts after John calls Tom a Sheridan. They then hear a commotion outside, and when they go to investigate, they find the monkey gone and the cage demolished, as well as a trackway of 16-inch footprints. Back in the tent, a dazed McNee sees a large hairy hand investigating the guns. Kusang returns and is startled by the sight. After finding some broken traps, the men try to comfort Kusang, who flees in fear into the night and down the snowy mountain. While trying to free McNee from his trance, Ed goes back outside and shoots the creature, and they find its dead body a short distance away. And as they begin to move it, the cries of others of its kind can be heard in the distance. The next morning, Kusang arrives terrified and exhausted back in the monastery, prompting Helen to pay some guides to help her search for the men after the llama denies her request. Later, McNee, still dealing with delirium, wanders off on his own up the mountain. John and Tom find him missing and begin searching for him, and they eventually find him at the top of a peak where he slips and falls to his death. They are then alerted back to the cave where they are keeping the Yeti's body, and find Ed in a state of panic after he was confronted by two creatures. Ed starts to show signs of paranoia, believing the other creatures want revenge on him for killing one of their own, so Tom asks him to set a steel net trap and act as bait in order to catch another Yeti alive, much to the disapproval of John. As the storm rolls in, Tom and John argue over Tom's greed to catch more creatures. Then, through the blizzard, they hear the trap go off and a terrified Ed. When they reach the cave, they find the steel net destroyed and Ed dead from what seemed to be a heart attack. Wondering why Ed's gun didn't go off, John inspects it and finds dummy rounds. Tom then admits to tricking Ed, hoping to not kill another Yeti. After burying Ed's body, John inspects the Yeti corpse, and while remembering the advice of the llama, he begins to feel differently about the creature. That maybe they're not the savage creatures or myth or a disadvantaged feeble animal clinging to life at the top of the world, but a gentle, wise being waiting for its chance to re-enter the modern world. He explains this to Tom, looking at the fact that both Ed and McNee died of natural causes and not the Yetis. John then starts to succumb to altitude sickness after hearing a weather broadcast from a broken radio, so he starts to breathe in oxygen through a breather. Then Tom as well starts to hear the voice of Ed calling for help, but as John tries to convince him that the voices aren't real, Tom runs into the snow to Ed's grave and starts shooting and firing his gun in a misguided guilt-ridden tirade, which triggers an avalanche, killing him. John ventures out to find him, but to no avail, so he returns to the cave where he comes face to face with two Yetis. They don't attack, but he does fall into a trance and is later found near frozen to death by Helen and Foxy. Back at the monastery, the Lama asks John if he found what he was looking for, to which John replies that he did not, seemingly believing that man is not yet ready for the truth, and the movie ends. In 1955, Nigel Neal writes a script for The Creature, a special TV play for the BBC on Sunday night starring Peter Cushing, Wolfe Morris, Arnold Marl, and Stanley Baker, all of which would reprise their roles in the film adaptation except for Baker, who was replaced by Forrest Tucker. Hammer Films decided to make a film adaptation and as well continue with the horror genre after a pitch by Milton Sklopsky for Frankenstein and the success of Neal's other film adaptations of Quatermass and Quatermass 2, also using the same director, Val Guest. To which Neal had a rocky relationship, as he wasn't a fan of how Guest would cut his scripts and meet the film's runtime.
And a guy called Milton Subotsky had come to them with a script called Frankenstein and the Monster, which they thought was terrible, frankly. But they were moved to actually inquire into recreating Frankenstein. And Jimmy Sangster, with a little assistance from Tony Hines, wrote an entirely different Frankenstein screenplay. And in November 1956, they made The Curse of Frankenstein. And there was a very good feeling, I think, about that film. The director, Terence Fisher himself, said that, after maybe a week, he began to think, I think, we're onto something here. This is actually might be something, not just a standard Hammer, production line item. This might actually do something.
Neal also happened to be friends with Edgar Wallace, who co-wrote King Kong in 1933. However, the Kong coincidences don't end there. Maureen Connell, who plays Helen Rawlinson in the movie, was married to John Gillerman, who directed King Kong 1976 and King Kong Lives 1986, as well as a few Tarzan films. The film reached substantial success coming out of the peak of the Yeti phenomenon, with expeditions such as the Daily Mail, Edmund Hillary, and the Everest reconnaissance missions in the 50s and 60s. Funny enough, Guest never saw the original televised Creature play, with it becoming impossible due to the BBC not recording it. This film was the first Hammer film appearance of Peter Cushing, who go on to play in 22 films total, including The Curse of Frankenstein, which was filmed later but released first in June 1957, while Abominable Snowman came out in October of 1957. It was originally to be titled The Snow Creature, however the name was already taken by the film directed by W. Lee Wilder 3 years prior in 1954. The film is also very similar plot-wise.
There was a little rash of Abominable Snowman movies in the 50s, largely low-rent US ones. In fact, the first announced title for the Abominable Snowman itself was The Snow Creature, until they discovered that there was already a B-movie of that very title.
In America, the movie was paired with The Crawling Eye, which also starred Forrest Tucker, who after playing in Abominable Snowman began playing in many British films. Kusang actor Wolfe Morris was also hired after he started to play with Neal's wife. He would go on to play Pad Masambawa in 5 episodes of the Doctor Who Abominable Snowman special. Val Guest was very meticulous when making the movie, often sketching exactly how the scenes would go and going through it with the cast and crew a day prior. So essentially just storyboarding, but very early on in the days of theater. While none of the actors filmed on location in the Pyrenees, Tucker would lie and say he did. He would also take cues from Peter Cushing, often trying to give ideas to the director.
Forrest Tucker, told all sorts of stories about the very dangerous time he spent filming these up in the mountains in the snow, and he never ever went further than Pinewood Studios. But he used to tell everybody that these shots, he was in these shots too. And we never corrected him. It was dear old Tuck.
But when they got shut down, he'd laughingly say,
he had a famous phrase, Tuck, if you said to him, no, Tuck, I don't like that, he would say, all right, if that's the way you wish to be remembered. And he used to bring this out any time. I'd say, no, I don't like that one, we'll have another one. Okay, if that's the way you wish to be remembered. It became a favorite phrase around the set.
When casted for the role, Tucker would say in regards to his face, this side of my face is a hero, this side is a ship. Tucker at 15 got his first gig in a burlesque show before being found out and kicked out. Then at 16 he tried to enlist in the army, but was turned away. And after that, he did find some luck in acting. Tom is also noted by Guest as a Carl Denham type character. Richard Wattis, mostly known for his comedy, was hired since he plays in almost every one of Val Guest's films, with Guest calling him the Film Rep Company. This was also the only Hammer project that would be produced by Aubrey Baring, who was known to show up on set in a posh Burberry raincoat and a Trilby hat, and would cart in caviar and duck liver while filming in the French Pyrenees. Nigel Kneale started as an actor for the BBC, however took to writing when it turned out that, he sucked. Through his career, Kneale would go on to work on more Quatermass projects, as well as being approached by director John Landis to work on an early screenplay for The Creature from the Black Lagoon, but this never went into production. And finally, working with Joe Dante to pen a script for Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, in just 6 weeks, with the go-ahead by John Carpenter and a good relationship with film's director Tommy Lee Wallace. Kneale would unfortunately pull out and have his name stricken from the credits after Dino De Laurentiis insisted on more violence like the previous 2 films, which Kneale wasn't a fan of considering he hated to be known as a horror or science fiction writer. Val Guest pretty much started his writing-directing career after making the comment that he could write a better script than Marcel Varnell's last film, to which Varnell took him up on his challenge, and Guest co-wrote the script for Varnell's next film, No Monkey Business, and the rest is history. Guest would go on to make many more films before going to Hammer, directing popular movies such as The Men of Sherwood Forest, Life of the Lions, and its sequel, The Lions in Paris. Guest was then tasked with directing the first Quatermass film, adapted from Nigel Kneale's script, and with its massive success, he would also direct Quatermass 2. With the popularity of Quatermass, Hammer would also ask Guest to adapt another Nigel Kneale script, this time based off of his 1955 BBC play, The Creature, which would go on to be The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas, or in some places known simply as The Abominable Snowman. Guest was very hands-on, and not just with filming, but also the editing process, as he had over 2 decades later a frustrating time when producer Ida Young completely re-edited his film When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth in 1970. Guest was also very adamant about how to view the creature itself. He only wanted to show parts of it and never the full thing to keep the mystery intact. Although there was a full monster constructed, Guest never used it, even scoffing at the studio heads that they wasted their money, although it was used for the film's promotion. He also wanted the Yeti to be more majestic when you first see it, so he used Fred Johnson, noting his eyes carried a lot of depth. However, IMDb notes this actor as John Ray. Guest only made a few changes to the film's script, often shortening it to meet the desired runtime and adding Maureen Connell's character as a strong female lead next to Cushing and Tucker, even naming her Helen after Cushing's real wife. In the TV version, sawdust was used to replace the snow and a dwarf actor was used to show more scale with the Yetis. The avalanche in the film was mostly old new stock footage, while most of the picturesque views were filmed on-site in Switzerland and the French Pyrenees Mountains. The crew utilized cable cars that would have to be de-iced every morning before they could take the trip to the highest observatory in the world. Along with the cable cars, helicopters were also used for aerial shots. It took a total of 10 days to film the climbing scenes in France. Abominable Snowman was the first Hammer film to be filmed with the Hammerscope, much to the dismay of Guest, who felt it was a bit impractical for CinemaScope and lacked depth. In his opinion, maybe Spielberg could make it work.
Hammer Films suddenly had acquired Hammerscope, and so everything we shot had to be in Hammerscope. I wouldn't normally have wanted to do it. I prefer normal screen. You have great difficulties when you're using this scope, is to remember you're using scope, and that many times if you've got a fairly full shot, you've got to remember that your character's left and right screen can possibly be out of focus, could also be possibly out of frame. So that all the composition of your frames in this manner of shooting had to be very carefully thought out.
Guest also researched Tibetan dialogue and had the help of dozens of Chinese waiters from the London area to be the background temple folk of the monastery.
A little interesting comment on this scene is all these wonderful Chinese Tibetan faces are nearly all Chinese waiters culled from all London's Chinese restaurants. When we came to shoot this, we needed so many of them. The casting people just rounded them up from the restaurants, and for months after that, every time we went, Joanne and myself went to a Chinese restaurant, a whole lot of people would say hello to me. I know all the waiters. They'd all been monks on Abominable Snowman.
Nigel Neal felt that the Mask of the Yeti wasn't completely convincing, but was still satisfied. Peter Cushing, while filming, came to be known as Props Cushing, as he would fiddle around with props believing it was what a scientist would do, much to the amusement of the other cast and crew. In one scene, he improv'd the part where Dr. Rawlinson takes out a nail filer and scrapes the supposed Yeti tooth. Cushing also improv'd the cigarette at the beginning of the film and would make a little dance when guests would yell, "Cut."
Peter, of course, is one of the most wonderful characters I've met in a long time. He was so wrapped up in his work, and strange enough, he became known, he was loved by the whole unit, and he became known as Props Cushing, because without telling anybody, he would suddenly bring a prop out during the scene while he was playing it, and everybody had to try and keep a straight face, but he did it so beautifully. I remember when he was looking in this sequence, I don't know if it's this sequence, but it's in this set, he was looking at the tooth of the Abominable Snowman, or an old tooth that they had found, and we'd rehearsed it several times, where he takes the tooth out and looks at it and examines it, and then suddenly when I said, "Right, let's shoot it," he brought out a nail file in the middle of the scene and scraped the tooth to see whether it was ivory or not. And of course we were all trying desperately not to laugh, because he almost threw the other actors. But he didn't do it to do that, he did it because he suddenly thought, what a wonderful piece of business, a scientist might do this. So he became known as Props Cushing.
Guests noted that it was difficult to import ice and snow to the sets, and most filming took place at Pinewood for expedition shots with the actors, and the monastery filming took place at Bray Studios, which is a manor house near Windsor Castle by Bray Village. All of the incredibly authentic set design could be attributed to the talented Bernard Robinson, and producer Anthony Nelson Keys is also noted by guests as the main boots-on-the-ground guy. Salt as well was used to give a snowy look, and a matte painting was used to depict the outside of the monastery. The film was initially distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures, 20th Century Fox, and Exclusive Films. During the premiere at the Royal Opening Empire London Leicester Square, director Val Guest sat right next to the night's special guest, Lord Louis Mountbatten, then serving as the First Sea Lord. However, Guest knew him for his role of Commander-in-Chief of the Burmese Army Operations. Mountbatten insisted he knew exactly where the film was shot, however, Guest opted not to contradict him. In 2013, it was announced that there would be a remake written by John Croker and Matthew Reed, with Ben Holding producing. However, this never came to be, and as of 2024, there seem to be no plans for a remake, but it could still happen considering Hammer is making a comeback. The film was also released on Blu-ray December 10th, 2019. Yeah, it's raining a little bit, so it's a little darker in here, but what can I say about The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas? This movie is really good. I love creature flicks. This one really appeals to me because I love black and white creature flicks as well. Universal Monsters, King Kong, Godzilla. I love black and white. It's always just one of the best ways to go in terms of a creature monster film. Although you could say that this isn't really much of a horror movie, even though it's implied. It's more like, I don't want to say psychological thriller, it's more like paranoia horror in a way. Because the way that most everyone dies in this is through paranoia and not through the actual monsters that exist. In terms of how the monsters look, I mean, you don't see them. There are some pictures of what the suit supposedly looked like. And I will say they actually do kind of look better than the Snowbeast designs. Both the Snowbeast designs. But look decent enough. Apparently they were really tall or whatnot. But all in all, I really enjoyed how they portrayed the monsterness. And really, this is I would think this is the first, if I'm remembering canonically, the first Hammer horror movie in the genre, because of course the Frankenstein came out before, but was actually came out before, but it was made after this film was made. So this one came shortly after, but so technically it came first. I don't want to say that. It's technically the first of the Hammer monster movies. Even though no one really thinks of it as that, because when you think of Hammer, you typically think of Curse of Frankenstein, Horror of Dracula, even The Mummy, which all starred Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. I love all those. Well, I have not seen the Horror of Dracula, unfortunately. I've not seen that yet. Have seen the Curse of Frankenstein. It's great. And I love The Mummy with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. I love that movie. But all in all, Monster is decent enough. It's hard to really judge it because it's not a monster per se. It's more of just this being that exists high up on the mountains. It's not a malicious being like the other Bigfoots and Sasquatches in this series. But all in all, I think they do their job, and I really just enjoy the movie. I just love the movie. I really do. I love everything about it. Sorry, but all in all, the monster's decent enough for what it is in the movie. All in all, it's more so the characters and the actors that carry it. Even though it is funny, I didn't see it in my script, but a lot of the race bending that happens is kind of funny because a lot of the monastery people are played by Chinese chefs. I believe it's the actor for the llama, Arnold Marl. I think he's German, if I'm not mistaken, and the actor who plays Kusang is actually a Ukrainian Jew. So it is always funny to go back and look at that. All these people are playing different races and whatnot. It's kind of funny. But all in all, I think they did a really decent job for the movie, especially this being his first, Peter Cushing's first Hammer film, especially. I'm a massive Peter Cushing fan. I love his movies as well as Christopher Lee. So this one's definitely a pickup if you love like the Hammer films, if you love Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and all that. Well, not Christopher Lee because he's not in this, but anyway, I think all the actors did pretty good. I think sorry, I'm looking at my so Forrest Tucker, I think he does a really great job playing Tom Friend. He's very much a Carl Denham-esque character. You know, that that adventurer, kind of sleazeball who wants to exploit the natural world and show it to the world for whatever the price was, for the price of an admission ticket. I'll show you the world, boys. I give you the Abominable Snowman, the 8th wonder of the world. That kind of jig. And I think he did a really good job of playing that Carl Denham kind of character. As well, Peter Cushing, of course, he rocks it. Peter Cushing's the man. Maureen Connell, I don't really know much about her other stuff. I believe she's, because I read in the script, she's married to the guy who directed the King Kong 76, if I'm not mistaken, or produced or whatever. But anyway, she does a pretty decent job in the movie. She could have probably been a pretty good scream queen for back in the day, in my opinion, if she did other like Hammer films or Universal horror movies and whatnot. I think she could have been pretty good at doing that. But all the other actors did a pretty decent job. I thought Robert Brown as Ed Shelley, he plays a pretty good character. I felt really bad for how he gets screwed over by Tom Friend. Basically dies of a heart attack because his gun's not going off and this giant ape man is standing right in front of him. Richard Waters, I thought he's really funny in the movie as Peter Fox. I believe they note him in the audio commentary as like, and I believe it's like the modern audio commentary, so they note him as a bit of a racist or whatever, I think is what they call him in the audio commentary. You know, that he sees the like the villagers or whatnot, all this all the superstition he sees as like savagery in a way, and that's kind of how they note him in the audio comment, because there's like two different audio commentaries in this. Highly suggest getting this if you like it. It's got all of this really nice behind the scenes stuff going on. Really suggest picking this up. I always thought Kusang's reaction to the Yeti was funny, and as well, I'm trying to find Michael Brill as McNee. I thought he did a really good job as well, also. So that's the characters. What do I think of the movie in its whole? I love these old black and white monster movies, man. I can't say anymore. I love it. Cinematography's great. The writing's pretty good, even though I'm pretty sure Nigel Neal would beg to differ because he apparently really hated when people adapted his scripts.
And I think that he was very upset. I was told he was very upset. In fact, he said so in various interviews. I'm talking about Nigel Neal. that he was very upset with the way I carved his Quatermass experiment about. But when you've got a thing that's run for 16 weeks or whatever it ran on television, you have to carve it out to get it on screen. You have to carve it down quite a lot. I always thought he was a brilliant writer. At that time, I don't think he was very familiar with what you had to do to get things on the screen. In this particular script of Abominable Snowman, it was beautifully written, and when it came to me, it was just that much too verbose, I felt, to hold on screen, so I did quite a bit of editing on it, and I don't think he liked that either.
Now what part, now this is interesting, look at the man in the balcony, he suddenly changes into Uncle Molly. You had to look quickly at that, or even play it back and rerun it. You see, I think it must have been a day when Uncle Molly wasn't free, and they shot somebody else in that scene.
And so I thought, well, I've got to do something about this. So I went around everybody in the studio and I said, you know, we all have keys in drawers that we don't use that are no longer. Give me all the keys you can find. And everybody gave me all their keys, old keys. And I spent the whole week not doing any script work, but tying little labels on each of these keys saying, finder will be rewarded, Hitchcock, 118 Brompton Road. And all of us, all at the studio, we dropped these in buses, underground, subways, race tracks, football tracks, everywhere we dropped these keys. And we waited, and 2 weeks nothing happened. At the end of the second week, my door opened and Hitch's face appeared around it. And he said, how many fucking keys did you drop? He never played another trick on me, ever. So it was one way to get rid of Hitch.
For film. But I think they did a fantastic job making this movie. I really love it, and it's really one I really love to go back to all the time. But anyway, what would I give a rating? I'm losing my voice a little bit. What would I give a rating for this movie? Personally, having my list is a 10 out of 10. Just thinking back, I really want to give it a 9 out of 10. Like 9 out of 10, it's a solid creature flick. I love it. Maybe more people think of it 8 out of 10. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I love watching this. I love watching in the background. So yeah, 9 out of 10 is my my final rating for the Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. So guys, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Enjoy the previous episodes of the Bigfoot Overdue Reviews horror movie series. Check out all the other ones. The previous one being Exists. The next one is not going to be so great of a movie, but hopefully you'll still enjoy the video. It's also probably going to be a very short one because there's not a whole lot to go on about it. But and then also the one after that is, of course, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, so I cannot wait to get down to that one. So thanks guys for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Check out the Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas if you can. Happy Halloween, and let's hit the 10,000 subscriber mark.